My name is Nicholas James Harris, named after both grandfathers, and I make art.
Nick Harris paints meticulously detailed and beautifully composed paintings, almost all of which involve architecture, both exterior and interior. As we look at some of Nick's work, I'll read excerpts from an art review by Mark St. John Erickson. Good things spring from deceptively small packages when you're looking at the paintings of Nicholas James Harris. This seemingly modest collection has an undeniable power, and it may be the exhibit that you're most likely to find yourself thinking and wondering about after the usual gallery goer's attention span of 10 minutes or so is over. Some of this clout springs from the subtle but authoritative manner in which Harris leads your eye. Keen observers will feel the tug of Harris's reins right away, perhaps even starting with the fact that his paintings often take on unusually tall and narrow proportions. This keyhole shape forces you to peer in rather than glance back and forth. What results are spaces that seem bigger, more complicated, and more mysterious than they have any right to be, especially given the physical restrictions that Harris builds into many of his paintings. And it's that capacity for creating a surprisingly large and compelling visual experience that makes his work so distinguished. Where this artist really excels, however, is in stoking the imaginative interaction between the viewer's vantage point and the succession of spaces he depicts on his canvas. Windows, doors, gates, and other passageways abound, all of them inviting us to look a little harder into the space and wonder what's inside the next room or around the corner. In the end, his painting is more concerned about our response to what it doesn't show than what it does. And that's because the mind's eye contributes as much to Harris's work as pigment and canvas. Even the tiniest details may bristle with significance. That's when you may realize it's the looking that's important here, and not the thing you're looking at. So Nick, what is it about architecture and what kinds of it attract you?
Well, anything that has a linearity to it that reveals perspective. The old architecture has more articulation, there are more details. It also has age. Other lives have been lived in it, and it will show the impact on it. When it's been necessary for people to work on the house, they keep trying to gussy it up. I said, no, the house is not supposed to look any better than the owner. I need the age on it.
You live in a very beautiful old house. Is that the kind of house you grew up in?
No, I grew up in a suburban split level, mid-20th century in Willow Grove. And one of the things nice about Pennsylvania, and it's all at risk because we don't really protect architecture here, but you could go down the street, cut through the woods, and there'd be a farmhouse from the 1730s back there.
Nick, you're drawn to these old houses. Are any of them haunted?
I have never encountered a ghost, but as a colleague from work said when she stepped into the house here in Roxborough, no filter whatsoever, she said, "Oh, your house smells and it's haunted."
Well, I can attest it doesn't smell, but about the haunted...
That's that resonance of life lived in the building.
Uh-huh. Although his drawings and oil sketches can be loosely expressed, Nick's finished paintings tend to be tightly rendered, with great detail and little visible brushwork. I asked him why.
I just tend to be oriented towards precision, it's temperament. One of the things I do with plein air sketches is just use a very limited time span available for the execution of the piece to force myself to be more gestural, more suggestive, and less definitive in the rendering of the image. It's also childhood growing up in Philadelphia, spending a lot of time staring at paintings in the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and what attracted me, which was the rendering of detail, and it became habitual.
Visiting museums became another habit. Nick showed me one of his many sketchbooks filled with his copies of artworks from a variety of museums. When I asked him about his influences, he said it's less about influence than artists who confirm his own predilections. And some of these include
Wilhelm Hammershøi, a Danish painter, stunning interiors, sometimes with figures in them. Andrew Wyeth, The Cooling Shed, which is in the Philadelphia Museum of Art. The angularity of it, the passageway through space, resonates with me. And in his figurative work, Anna Olsen cradling a kitten, such an endearing depiction of the emotional life of somebody facing the challenges that she had. Vermeer, the light, the personalities that come through, the suggestion of detail with the suppression of anything really specific. Holbein. Gerard Terborch. Rembrandt's self-portrait at the National Gallery. John Singer Sargent, I think possibly the best alla prima painter that's ever lived. Kathy Kolowitz.
Anyone from the world of abstraction?
Franz Klein is an example. Not a realist painter, but the compositions are similar to what I do in a realist vein.
When pressed to explain what his paintings mean, Nick got a little cagey.
It's useful to just, for the person who does the painting, to just get out of the painting's way once it's done. So I don't explain them to people. There's certain characteristics of the images that I don't really want to get into because I want people to come to that on their own. What I tell people in openings, take their mind off the leash, just let it roam through the image and see what it brings back to them. Think, don't talk. Painting, it's a non-verbal way of thinking, but it does derive from what everything else in life derives from, the childhood that you had. And there's certain things in your visual and physical experience in life that resonate with that. And that's what ends up being a painting.
Undeterred by Nick's think, don't talk dictum, I pressed him about the relationship between his self-portrait as an aging artist and this painting. Nick was house hunting when this kid suddenly appeared out of nowhere at the top of the stairs, just as Nick snapped a photo of the staircase. Is this the same person?
Technically, no. The kid was another person.
I know that, but
yeah,
psychically.
Well, okay, there are paintings coming out of the same life. So, and they both deal with transitions.
Incidentally, Nick said that his photo was not good enough to work from, so he ended up making sculptures of the kid for reference. Can you talk more broadly about your use of figures and how they relate to the architectural settings?
Frequently, the figure is treated as an actor in a play, and it doesn't necessarily represent that particular individual's personality. It is instead dealing with a particular emotional state, a transition point in someone's life, and using them to represent it. And the architecture that they're surrounded with is geometric amplification of what I see as going on at that moment in that individual's life. There are some paintings where it literally was a response to an individual that I knew. My interpretation of that person, my emotional response to that personality. But once again, even there, the architectural surroundings is just a geometric amplification of what I see represented by the figure.
Where would you place your paintings on a spectrum between the purely analytical and intellectual versus the purely emotional?
The inception of the painting is emotional, and I let the paintings come to me. I'm attuned as I move through the day at certain things that I encounter visually that I have an emotional response to. That's emotional. The content is emotional, but the analytical aspects of this come into then taking that first impression and working it into what will become the final painting.
Were you always interested in art, even when you were a little kid?
It's something that I did. I didn't really engage with it until I realized that I was no longer improving at it and that it was actually going to require effort. Then it got my attention.
How did you end up at the Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts?
Well, I come from a working class family, so I got a regular degree first, which is not a bad idea. First degree should be something that earns you money. The second degree could be something that's worth doing. So after the undergraduate degree and saving money up for 6 years, I went to Pennsylvania Academy of the Fine Arts.
Why there?
At all the other schools, when you sat down with faculty with your portfolio, they were saying complimentary things about it. When I went to the academy, they said, that's wrong. That needed to be done better. And I just thought, oh crap, I have to move back to Philadelphia. Because you're not going to go somewhere where they're going to pay you compliments. You need to go somewhere where they're going to criticize you.
Who were some of the teachers at the academy that helped you the most?
Just as a starting list, Lou Sloan and Liz Osborne, Bruce Samuelson, Arthur DaCosta. One of the advantages of the academy was that you had a wide variety of people, and you could just call in folks for crits and get a 360-degree view of what you're doing and then sort it out for yourself. And part of my interest in going to art school was just get a good methodical process for developing it. I'm not sure it's ever gotten that methodical. DaCosta and I had an interesting relationship. One of the things he once said about my work, he said, how you get the paintings you get out of the mess you make, I'll never understand.
Okay. Well, tell me about your process.
What I work with are things I encounter in daily experience to which I have an emotional reaction. There'll be thumbnail sketches, composition drawings where I go beyond what I will be using on the canvas. In that, I'm refining my understanding of the emotional content of the piece for me, editing out things that are extraneous to that, emphasizing those that aren't. Then I start cropping the image, and there it's being treated like a Franz Klein. I'm looking at the abstract patterns formed by the lines and shapes in the image. Once I've decided how to crop it, I look at what scale will this piece work. I tend to like small, intimate paintings that draw you in, but sometimes a large scale is needed to have the image embrace you, envelop you.
Nick, you are a great example of somebody who is dedicated your entire life to painting, and I assume you have not gotten overly rich from it. Is that correct?
That's correct. I think in my lifetime, only 53 works have sold. The day job was necessary to cover expenses. What I also found in the white-collar world, there was, in my personal experience, a lot of apprehension about hiring somebody who makes paintings. It got to the point where you just realized you don't bring that up in an interview.
They think of artists as somehow peculiar individuals?
As it was explained to me on one occasion, I said, why do you not like painters? And he said, because you people aren't reliable. You never stay. And I said, I've been here for 5 years. So...
Nick is happily retired from government work, but that doesn't mean he no longer has interesting encounters with the authorities. Because Nick likes to work from life as much as possible, he often goes out on location. That can have its challenges. Like the time the Philadelphia police told him something that turned out not to be true.
They said City Hall courtyard will be open until sundown. This was on New Year's Eve, 2021. I'm in there, I'm working. All of a sudden, it looks like the tide is going out. A load of people withdrawing from the courtyard. And a rent-a-cop is there. We're closing. I said, it's 3 o'clock. The police said it would be open until sundown. He said, we're closing now. You need to leave. I said, I'm over there painting. I have to put the easel together. I got everything together, came out. He's gone, and I'm locked in. But I managed to get the attention of somebody I saw through one of the windows. You would not believe how many gates and doors this guy had to unlock to get me out of the place. Another episode was working on a nocturne at the White House in Lafayette Plaza. All of a sudden, I'm blinded. The Secret Service had approached me with 2 squad cars. They hit the floodlights. There are a bunch of guys with guns. I can't see because of the glare. And one of them says, "Good evening, sir. Can we ask what you're doing?" And I'm working on a nocturne. And he said, "Oh, what's a nocturne?" So we got things sorted out. Once they saw that it was a drawing, they were fine.
And the happy ending is that Barack Obama bought that painting?
No.
And even when there are no men with guns crimping Nick's plein air experience, it's still not easy. Here's one of my very favorite paintings by him. It's a cemetery near his house. But look at how he had to lug all his gear over there. Ay, ay, ay. So are you going to happily be painting for the duration?
I will happily be making art for the duration. I mean, in strictly practical terms, there may be a point where I've run out of room for the paintings and there's going to be a lot of work on paper because you can take 500 drawings and store them in 3 portfolios. 500 paintings, you're buying another house.
Very nice talking to you, Nick. And I have to, again, thank you. My one experience of being on public television is 100% due to you. You made that happen, and I thought it was a fool's errand, but you got it done. Thank you.
No problem. That's what persistence will get you.
Thanks, Nick. And you don't mind if I portray you as slightly peculiar?
Oh, we got slightly in there. Usually there's no qualifier.
I'm well aware that me calling anybody slightly peculiar is a textbook case of pot calling kettle black. But I do think the personality of an artist helps you understand their work. Highly intelligent, Nick builds complex gizmos to help him paint without relying on photography. But he also makes things like this.
The plastic inserts that your socks are on when you buy them, save those, put the binder clips over them, and that's how you can hang your brushes to dry upside down.
The thing about Nick that is kind of interesting is that he doesn't have a smartphone, but he has an enormous monitor, curved, and then he has all these receipts.
You can then use a DOS directory command, redirect the output to a text file, and then you write formulas that will then calculate.
Do you know of any other artist who does this?
There are 8.5 billion people on the planet, and I'm probably the only one who does any of the things I do.
Balancing out any eccentricities is Nick's rather profound philosophical nature. A few nights ago, Nick sent me this audio file.
It's comforting to think that humans have a purpose, and if we do, one argument would be to be good shepherds to the skills assigned to us. And for me, that would be making art. And giving the paintings that result the best chance I can give them to survive.
And that, of course, means getting them into the hands of people who will value them. During his working years, Nick had a certain government clearance level and was discouraged from selling or even showing his work. But now that he's retired, he's building a website and would love to hear from anybody who'd like to find out more about his work. And Barack and Michelle, these would look great in your presidential library.